All right, greetings everybody, and welcome to week number 11. That is right, week number 11. Boom, boom, plus one. Week number 11 of your 9489 class, which is your cultural heritage class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. Jace K. Austin, and what we're going to do this week, it's not going to be a long check-in video from me this week because, quite frankly, there's going to be a very long one on the horizon when we get to the Confederate heritage module and we're talking about the naming controversies and things of that nature. That one's going to be very, very long. So I'm going to try to bang out a few short ones before then. This one I will try to keep under 25 minutes. I shouldn't have any problem keeping it under 25 minutes. But what we're going to do today is a quick state of the course update, and then I am going to harp again on the Trump administration, but I am going to say something that is very, very relevant to what we are discussing this week. Like I've told you all before, the check-in videos don't necessarily follow the content focus of the modules for the week. So, for instance, during the cemetery unit, I still had a check-in video that dealt largely with sport, cultural heritage and sports. But the check-in videos are not really meant to align with the course content that much. If they do, that's fine. If they don't, it's going to be okay too, because it's my class. But yeah, the check-in videos are really more so about, staying up with current events or current ideas, or just getting something off my chest that I know is relevant to the class. And that is what I will be doing today. So anyway, with all of that said, give me one moment and we will get into it. State of the course update. Pause. Okay, so the first thing that we need to bring up with our state of the course update is that your vocational guidance should be up and going. So your vocational guidance again was the mini interviews. So we've got those here, and I believe everybody now has turned their mini interview in. So what I want you all to do from here is make some time. You can do it this week or whenever, but make some time before the course ends to actually look over your look over the mini interviews, not yours. Sorry, look over the mini interviews of your classmates and such, and see what they came up with. And from there, just use that as vocational guidance. Get a sense of what some people are doing in the cultural heritage arena, what their job duties are, whether you'd like to do something similar, and also pay attention to how they got to where they are. So that is one of the first things that I want you all to be aware of and take note of as you enter this week. The next thing that I want you all to be kind of aware of and have on your radar is that we are going to have a sync session next week, and that will be related to the Sound Archive, the Library of Congress Sound Archive project, and that guest speaker for next week is going to be Josh Shepard, who is an associate professor for the University of Colorado Boulder. Okay, so we are going to welcome Josh next week, and because we are having a guest speaker next week, we will not have a check-in video next week. All right, so those are the main things to be mindful of at this time. A third thing that you need to be mindful of is, and this probably should have even came before the note about the sync session next week, but also, another thing that you need to be mindful of as we come back home over here is that you are going to have an assignment due this weekend. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. You're going to have an assignment due this weekend. Hopefully everybody took the midterm quiz. I think everybody did. Just I'll go back in there and make sure. But the midterm quiz was easy, and so if you went the last time I checked the grades, there were just a few outstanding, but pretty much everybody who did take it had that 4 out of 4. Everybody who had taken it by that point had a 4 out of 4. So there we go. And so this coming weekend, what you're going to have is, in addition to your heritage tourism discussion board prompt, you are going to have your top 4 most important cultural heritages in a community paper that's going to be due. And I know that this is kind of an unorthodox assignment, I should say. It's an assignment that you probably haven't had anything quite like before as far as writing a paper. So because of that, there are 5 sample papers. These first 2 sample papers are more so your typical kind of responses to the original prompt. And then I've had students who did really well taking unique approaches or unorthodox approaches on their papers, and so those became sample papers 3, 4, and 5. So you can look at those If you read the prompt and you're still just kind of lost, I understand, but the sample paper should help you. And from reading the sample papers, go ahead. After you read the sample papers, you can go ahead and do something that, works for you, I guess I should say. And if you are wanting to take an unorthodox approach that has been done before, these are 3 papers where an unorthodox approach was taken, and I actually have had 2 of you already reach out to me and say, well, I kind of wanted to do this, I kind of wanted to do that, what do you think? I approve of both of those. And so if you do have an unorthodox approach that you want to take and you want to run it by me to make sure that it will be okay, just send me a message and I got you covered. I will respond with a or a let's work on this a little bit more. Okay, so you've got that coming. And this is also the appropriate time for me to note that if you've been doing and keeping up with all of your assignments, then the only other thing that you have left, as far as major assignments after you turn in the 4 cultural heritage assignment paper, the only thing that you'll have left outside of your weekly discussion board posts is going to be your final paper. And then if you are doing a heritage project instead of your final paper, then so be it. If you're doing a heritage project instead of your final paper, then that is something that some of you have already done. And if you have not done it, but it's on the horizon, just make sure that you are ready to turn in some proof to me that you did it, and you will be on your way from there. So yeah, we are in April. We are firmly in April, and things are rolling along steadily, and you all have been a great class, and I hope you have enjoyed the course. There's not much course left, but certainly I have enjoyed you throughout what we have experienced so far. All right, and so I think that's pretty much it with our state of the course updates. So from here, let's talk just a very little bit. I am going to talk a very little bit about heritage tourism and the Trump administration and some of the things that I am worrying about when it comes to IMLS. All right, so for those of you who don't know, IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, is a federal institute. The Trump administration has basically put everybody on administrative paid leave within that particular institute of the government, but the Trump administration is eyeing IMLS as one of the things that they kind of put on the chopping block and say, hey, no more of this. We, as people who work in GLAM, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, GLAM, those of us who work in GLAM, we do not need this to happen, quite frankly. If IMLS is abolished, then that is going to send shockwaves to libraries and museums throughout the country, and it's not going to just affect federal museums. This is something that, or federal level things, this is something that is a little bit of a misconception for those who haven't been following along. But what I need you all to understand is that IMLS does a lot in the way of grant work. They do a lot in the way of just other things that help share best practices. And so when IMLS is gone, that is going to affect institutions on the state and local level as well, because a lot of those were dependent on the federal grants that were coming through IMLS, okay? Sorry, hold on, my recording software is being a little weird. Okay, so my recording software is like glitchy, and I don't think it's its fault. I think it's my fault. I think I've got too many windows open. But yes, I've had to go back and truncate a bunch of stuff. So I hope that everything that I had up to the 8:10-minute mark is still there, and that was mostly state of the course update. So what we're going to talk about now again is Trump administration stuff and how it is potentially going to affect what is going on with museums, and from there with heritage tourism. So heritage tourism is our focus for this week. So I am actually on topic for this week, but that does not always happen to be the case, okay? But yes, for this week, I am going to talk a little bit about heritage tourism. And what I want to talk to you all about is this. So Trump has gone after IMLS. And for those of you who don't know, IMLS is the Institute of Museum and Library Services. It's a federal institute. It's only got about, it's fewer than 100 employees. I think it's only like 70 employees. But the Institute of Museum and Library Services does a lot as far as funding grants for libraries and museums throughout the country. And they're not always federal, right? So one thing that we have to make clear as we discuss this is that there are museums that are being affected by this that are not like national museums, not museums owned by the U.S. government. State museums and local museums rely on some of the grants and funding from IMLS in order to stay afloat. And so those museums are going to be in danger of losing funding and therefore not being able to operate due to the actions of the Trump administration. And where this comes in with heritage tourism is this, all right? So let me first add the disclaimer that I repeat, I am not a scholar in the tourism area at all. So I do know a little bit about heritage tourism and things like that. Cultural tourism is sometimes called cultural tourism and everything like that, but I don't really have a firm grounding in that because that is not my discipline. So I've got like a superficial understanding. But what I will say is that even in my superficial understanding of heritage tourism, cultural tourism, and everything like that, most tourism scholars who break down the different types of tourism will include either heritage tourism or cultural tourism within their types of tourism that they list. In fact, let me get one example. This will just be one example, and there's certainly, I was looking, so I can tell you there is certainly not a consensus here. There's not a consensus here. Some scholars within tourism have more than just these 4 areas of types of tourism. Everything that I've seen does have at least 4 types, but I've seen people who have more than 4 types, and then I've seen scholars who recognize different types. But pretty much every scholar that I've looked at, or everything that I've looked at talking about tourism in a scholarly sense, they have included either heritage tourism or cultural tourism or something very similar as a specific type of tourism. Again, let me pull up something, and it might just be a Wikipedia page just to save some time here, but hold on for a second. All right, so here's what I want right here, and I apologize that this video is very, very disjointed from the tech issues to now me not finding the links that I was reading earlier, but this is going to do enough to suffice for what we need for this video. So again, there's no consensus from these tourism scholars as far as the types of tourism that there are and the types of tourist attractions that there are. But if I shift the focus here from tourism to tourist attraction, then what I can do is, again, this is not a consensus, but sort of a broad way of presenting things that Wikipedia has offered us. We can go ahead and just use that. And if you've taken my reference class before, you know that Wikipedia's issue is not accuracy. Its main issues are authority and stability. So I'm not going to go back into that. You learn that in reference. If you need a refresher on that, then contact me individually. But what we are going to talk about right now is that museums are recognized as a specific type of tourist attraction. And that would be cultural tourist attractions. So with this Wikipedia page for tourist attraction that I am going to link with this video, you've got basically 4 categories that they are placing tourist attractions in. And those 4 examples, again, are human-made attractions. So those can include the Colosseum in Rome, the Great Wall of China, Taj Mahal, the Eiffel Tower, the Egyptian pyramids, so forth and so on. Of course, we all know, however, that it was not humans who made the Egyptian pyramids. It was actually aliens. I'm just playing. Dr. Jace is terrible as far as my sense of humor. Natural tourist attractions, those can include the Grand Canyon. They can include the Serengeti. Here in the United States, they can include things like national parks, and we'll talk a little bit about national parks as well. And then you have cultural tourist attractions, and you have novelty attractions. So novelty attractions, they can be well, they've got a whole thing for tourist trap there. I would say that a novelty attraction, for instance, would probably be Mount Rushmore. But let's go back to cultural tourist attractions right here. This is where you're typically going to find your museums listed within cultural tourist attractions. And yes, these things are, when people, I don't know, and I would need to probably talk to a tourism scholar in order to get this information, but I don't really have the time right now. But it's something that I would be interested in if somebody else followed up on it. And certainly, hopefully, I can enhance the course after you all take it, unfortunately. But maybe I can enhance the course this summer to have this information. But I didn't know I was going to need this information when I actually updated the course back in December and January. But yes, so I don't know what percentage of museum tourists, I should say. I don't know what percentage of museum tourists would actually go to a city or town just to visit the museum versus what percentage of museum tourists are actually going to a city or a town for another reason to see something else. But then while they're there, they decide, oh, I'll take in a museum. But either way, museums end up being a popular tourist attraction for people who are touring. For people who are visiting new cities, or not even necessarily new cities, but they're visiting a city that they don't live in or a town that they don't live in. Maybe they're there to, for instance, catch a ball game. We have a ball game going on tonight. We have the national championship for men. Don't ask me. I'm a South Carolina fan, so don't ask me how the national basketball championship for women went. Just know that, UConn has always been bad, and they continue to be bad MFers. But yes, so we've got a game tonight, and the game is going to take place in excuse me again. Okay, so the men's championship game tonight is going to take place in San Antonio, Texas. And so there are definitely a lot of people in San Antonio right now who don't live in San Antonio, but they are there in order to watch the ball game tonight. But when you are in town to watch a ball game, you are probably going to do some things other than just watch that ball game. You're probably going to visit some local restaurants. You're probably going to see some local attractions. And some of those local attractions can include local museums and other sorts of cultural heritage places such as parks and things like that. Now, what I want you all to be aware of, and you can actually just, you can even just Google this yourself. So if I go to google.news.com and I put in IMLS, any sort of state, let's do Texas, and then museums. Let's see what comes up. Yes, so, well, these are the, okay, here's one. North Texas libraries and museums could lose federal funding. San Antonio museums respond to latest round of federal funding cuts. The Dodge Act comes for libraries and museums, so forth and so on. But if you put any state, here's the thing, pretty much any state that has a decent population, I would say your top 20 states. I have seen headlines in recent days in my Google News feed about these museums in these states preparing for these federal budget cuts and these sorts of things. And what I don't think, because again, a lot of business people are Trump people. They are not necessarily MAGA in how they think, but they do think that Trump is good for business. And what I'm going to say is when you are talking about museums and other forms of things that, when you talk about museums and other forms of tourist attractions, when those things are reliant on federal dollars, yes, it can be detrimental to the business community when those things go, and also when the parks go, because again, Trump has been cutting funding to federal parks as well. So what you're seeing as a result of the cuts to federal parks, and parks are part of cultural heritage as well, what you're seeing due to these cuts to federal parks is that parks are reducing hours, they're reducing the amount of features that they can show people and things like that, because they have less staff now. So that is going to affect tourism. And another thing that is going to affect tourism is going to be with Trump cutting funding to these museums. Yes, that means that these museums are going to go and they are going to have to cut hours. They are going to have to cut staff. They are going to have to cut some of the things that they actually have and feature. They're going to have to cut advertising, and some of them are going to close. And when these things happen, this is what the business community doesn't know. When these things happen, it is going to have an economic impact on business. It's going to have an economic impact on hotels. It's going to have an economic impact on gas stations, on restaurants, and on other forms of tourism, because on other tourist attractions and things like that. Because when you, like, let's say that people, they're not necessarily, for instance, coming into San Antonio to visit the museums in San Antonio, but let's say that while they're in San Antonio to watch the game tonight, they're going to maybe stay for a couple more days, and maybe they would have taken in some museums and things like that. Maybe they're doing that this year because the effects of the cut still haven't been felt. But when we talk about next year, if I don't know where the Final Four is going to be next year. I don't know if it's in the same place every year or not, to be honest with you, because I can never afford to go. But if these cuts start affecting things on a deeper level, then yes, when people have fewer reasons to kind of hang around, what they're going to do is they're not going to hang around. So if they're not museums that they can visit and things like that, then instead of staying a few more days and seeing what else is in the community they can check out, they're just going to be like, well, hey, I watched the game and now I'm just bored with San Antonio, so I'm getting out of here. Okay. And so these people are going to go back home. And so when people are not staying and lingering around, there's also less of an opportunity that they are going to find some of these other tourist attractions in small mom and pop stores and things like that. Those can be tourist attractions as well. So when you're talking about these tourist attractions, you're also talking about, yes, this is going to eventually have an effect on, like, for instance, one of my favorite places here in Missouri is, St. Charles? Yes, St. Charles, the main street in St. Charles. I love it. I love St. Charles Main Street. I've only been there once, but I stayed there a weekend and I can't wait to go again. And that's going to be something, those, if museums and things dry up in in St. Charles County, then that's going to have an effect on, people may not want to hang around Main Street as much because, okay, I would have done Main Street, but now the museums and some of the other things that are going on in Main Street, they're done. And I know that there's at least one museum in like a park near the St. Charles Main Street. Once that's gone, okay, now there are going to be fewer people on Main Street in St. Charles. And what's going to happen then is some of those stores on St. Charles are going to feel that. They're going to feel the effects. They're going to have to close. And that's going to have a ripple effect. After those places close, other places are going to close. St. Charles Main Street then becomes less of a desirable tourist attraction. And that causes a ripple effect for the rest of St. Charles and so forth and so on. So there are levels to this, and they are not, in my opinion, great levels. This is not something that the business community, I think, understands the detriment of what's going to happen. And again, this is happening in states across the country. This is not just happening at the federal level. Again, I would challenge you to just do a museum, not a museum, to do a Google News search and throw different states in there, and you're going to start seeing similar Virginia institutions face uncertainty as Trump admins, suspends museum and library agency, blah, blah, blah. You'll see this for a lot of different states, not just Texas and Virginia. Go ahead and plug New York in there and New Jersey in there and Missouri in there, and you're going to see the exact same thing. And this is going to have a ripple effect on tourism throughout the country. And I don't think a lot of people in the business community realize just how much various types of businesses are kept afloat in part due to tourism. And when businesses start falling, that's going to have a ripple effect on other businesses. So we're not in great times right now. I'll leave it there. And I know this was disjointed. Again, I apologize. It was partly due to the tech issues I was experiencing, but I still hope you got something out of that and you are going to enjoy Josh's presentation next week. Until then, I am Dr. Jace, and if you want to get people to a place, then you have to adequately fund cultural tourist attractions and heritage tourist attractions so that people will come in and want to come in and spend their money in these in these locations, these locale places. Okay. So yeah, just again, keep that in mind. There are going to probably be challenges on the horizon, and hopefully these things will be corrected when whoever succeeds Trump does so. All right. I will see you all next week in Josh's Sync session.